right, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Big Doug and Carmi Show, your one-stop shop for all things Commanders. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, click the notification so you never miss an episode like today's episode with Matt Miller from ESPN, NFL Draft Scout and Insider. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing well, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, no doubt. Matt, my folks originally from the Midwest, they're always telling me there's two ways. You're a Missouri man. Is it Missouri or Missouri?
Oh man, so if you
And
ask my
does it
dad, it's
depend on where
Missouri.
you're at?
I think it depends on where you're at and how old you are. So I'm from like southwest Missouri, almost Arkansas, and almost Oklahoma, like right there in the corner. My dad says Missouri. I say Missouri. So it is. I think it's more generational than location. Like southeast Missouri, which like Missouri's a deceptively big state. It's like 300 miles across. Southeast Missouri, you're getting closer to like Kentucky, Tennessee. Definitely Missouri if you get over there by the river.
I got you. All right. With the passing of Jerry West, it got me thinking, Matt, about the logo. If they redid the NFL logo, who should be the man on the logo?
Yeah, for me, it's Jerry Rice, and I think a lot of people are going to say Tom Brady. Tom Brady's got the most rings. He's had this iconic career. I still give me a Jerry Rice catch, or there's that. I used to have a football card of it. It might actually be behind me of him like running. There's kind of this iconic shot of him running. That would be mine. It's harder with football, right? Because there's not one thing everyone does. Basketball, the logo with Jerry West is so iconic. But it's a move all basketball players make. I think for football, it would be a little bit harder. The Heisman's a pretty good one. The stiff arm is a pretty damn good logo as well. So I know that's more of a college thing, but it's a lot of fun. You're like running through the different shots. Even like I know I shouldn't say this on a Commanders podcast, but the Odell like one-handed reach back catch might be kind of a cool one as well.
I was thinking maybe Barry Sanders or Sweetness too, one of those guys that get low in a move. But I spent probably too much time thinking about that yesterday. Let's see, it's a whole new day in Washington, Matt. I'm curious, just like from an overview of the way they've rebuilt the program, the organization, literally from the top down, just kind of what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been impressed. I don't know if you guys remember, it was 1 year ago, and Commanders fans hated me because saw the talk about Sam Howell, and I said, my comp for Sam coming out of college was Colt McCoy, and that was the wrong thing to say on radio, apparently, even though it was how I felt. Commanders fans scorched me for that one. So here we are a year later. You got a new general manager, a new head coach, and a new quarterback. So I'm excited to see where things go, and I think anytime there's new ownership, you expect this. You expect a house cleaning to some degree. And obviously, like your stars are not going anywhere. Like you're not moving Terry McLaurin, just because you have a new owner and a new GM and a new coach. But I think they've done a really, really good job. This was one of my favorite draft classes of any team. I thought they did a fantastic job of hitting value, hitting needs, but not being so beholden to needs that you – like I'm old school with this. Like I think if you draft for strictly needs, it looks good when we do our draft grades on Sunday morning after the draft, but it doesn't build a team very well. Mm-hmm. So I think Washington did a good job of finding a balance between those two things, going for value, going for some needs, but also looking at this as, we need these guys to be contributors for 4 to 5 years and hopefully beyond that, where maybe you have some guys who are 8 to 10 year contributors. So I'm a fan of it. Adam Peters is someone who has such a great reputation around the league as an evaluator, as a leader. It's tough because guys who were previously in that spot of clear-cut number one front office hire, Chris Ballard, Joe Douglas, like they haven't exactly burnt up the NFL. And then you have a guy like Brett Veach in Kansas City who was, a little bit of an afterthought when they fired John Dorsey. And now he's arguably one of the best general managers of football. So all that to say, I like the Adam Peters hire a lot. There's obviously some connection to the ownership group, and I'm excited to see how this first draft class plays out for them.
Before we get into the draft class, I'm curious. It feels like the one thing that we've noticed about Peters and Dan Quinn are that people around the league are excited to work with them, and it's something we've not really had here in a while, but like the staff, there were and players. There are people that are actually coming here not because we threw the bag at them, but because they wanted to work with Dan Quinn and like Dan Quinn. And it feels like front office wise, it's the same thing with Adam Peters.
Yeah, and I think even ownership-wise, to have Josh Harrison there instead of Dan Snyder is a huge part of it. Of where I don't think you're getting Adam Peters with Dan Snyder as your owner. I really don't. I don't think that he would have gone to such an unstable environment. Probably the same thing for Dan Quinn. Maybe even the same thing for offensive coordinator like Cliff Kingsbury. Where they would say, that's not a spot where I can go. If you're Cliff, it's not a spot where you can go kind of rehab your career a little bit. You need to go in and get hot and be able to jump, to another head coaching gig, whether it be college or the NFL. So I do agree with you completely that whether it be Josh Harris or Adam Peters or Dan Quinn, there's certainly a level of respectability back in Washington that has been missing for a long time.
Go ahead, Doug.
Well, let's get right to the quarterback. I mean, it all starts and ends with that. Where were you in the process pre-draft, and where are you now with his fit in Washington?
I was a huge Jaden Daniels fan, and I feel like for me, it was like October watching him play, and I was like, damn, this dude he's good. He's gotten better, to watch the improvements, to see, even week 0 against Florida State. Florida State roughed him up a little bit, but the toughness, the dedication to trying to stay in the pocket more. He's a guy that doesn't turn the ball over, but I saw him taking more chances this year, which I think was a big part of his development as well. So I want to say by October, somebody could fact check me and say, hey, actually it was November. I think by October, I had him as QB2 in this class and just wrote it out from there. I think he's a fantastic player. And my comp for him was Lamar Jackson and I think he's farther along than Lamar was coming out of Louisville as a passer. That's just an experience thing, being in college for a couple more years, but the dynamic running ability, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons in the SEC is really, really hard to do as a runner, especially as a quarterback. The most accurate deep ball thrower in college football last year, 22 touchdowns to 0 picks on deep ball passing. And I think you just saw the maturation of him as a quarterback, as a prospect, as a leader to some degree. So I'm really, really excited to see what he does.
How do you think, just a follow-up, how do you think he fits with Cliff?
My initial thought, even like my hesitation there, is like trying to separate Cliff from like the Texas Tech days to, the Arizona Cardinal days. And so I think like Texas Tech days, I don't know that he would have been that great of a fit, but I think if it's more of what we saw Kyler Murray do, then I'm really excited about the fit because they did set things up for Kyler, whether it be RPO or, a lot of designed like half rolls to where let's cut the field down. We've got a couple options for you in your progression. If they're not there, use that speed. So I think, early on, that's what I hope they do with Jaden is, and obviously you can't do that, every play, you have to develop over the course of the season or people are going to catch up to it. But I think Jaden has enough arm strength, field vision, and mobility that he could even elevate this offense beyond where, Kyler was hurt so much. And there's some issues with his height where you had to get him out of the pocket. Those aren't going to be there with Jaden as much. So I think it is going to give you a lot of room to open things up.
Going into the draft, Washington had so much draft capital, and I think they began getting great praise with Jaden Daniels and Johnny Newton at 36. One thing that was kind of polarizing in D.C. was pick 40. I don't know if you recall, but Washington traded away their pick 40 and the Eagles got Cooper DeJean as a result. They got Cooper DeJean in a 4th-round pick, which ended up being Will Shipley. And then Washington got Mike Sanderson and Ben Sinnott as a result, pick 50 and 53. Yeah. I'm just kind of curious from your thoughts, who do you think won that trade? Do you think it was a even trade, or what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I always like the idea of getting more players than not, so like getting 2 guys in the 2nd round, I would rather have that than, and I'm a Cooper DeJean fan. I really am. I couldn't believe he was still available there. So like time will tell, but I think for Washington, this is some of the nuance that gets lost when we only have a couple minutes to talk about picks. Washington's in a different spot than Philly is. Philly's trying to plug holes to get back to the Super Bowl. Washington's trying to build a team. So both teams could win this trade because for Philly, we need an instant impact guy. Our secondary was ass last year. We got to get some players out there. This dude's going to come in week 1. He's going to help immediately. He's probably going to play some special teams as well. So for Philly, it's like you're getting that instant impact. But for Washington, you'd rather have 2 guys who are top 55 draft picks than 1, obviously, because you're trying to fill out a roster. You're trying to rebuild this organization. So I think to get Ben Sinnott, Mikey Sainristil, Sainristil is one of the most highly regarded players in the entire draft. You talk to any college football coach, they would tell you, like, that's my dude, that's my guy. So I like it for Washington. I thought tight end was a huge need for this team that didn't really get talked about enough. Just giving Jaden or whomever, that middle of the field option is going to be huge for them. And then obviously, Mikey's going to be the starting nickelback from day one. And the secondary, especially with the regime change, secondary is going to look completely different. The things that you need back there are completely different. And Emmanuel Forbes, the jury is very much out on Emmanuel Forbes. I'm going to withhold any judgment until training camp and maybe, a couple weeks into the regular season. But I think, finding playmakers in the secondary is a hard thing to do. So anytime you can get one, it's a good move.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that. How do you feel about Emmanuel Forbes? Do you feel like, were you a fan of him coming out last year? I know he got picked ahead of Deontay Banks and Joey Porter Jr., even Christian Gonzalez. So it was kind of maybe an eyebrow raise, but what were your thoughts on him? What was your –
The fan base was upset when Christian Gonzalez was there and they passed. I know that.
I was upset about that. Yeah, I loved Christian Gonzalez. So I was like, the hell just happened? Sitting in my hotel room in Kansas City, writing the draft cast thing. And I'm like, what? Like, and you knew there's some injury things there, but with Forbes, I liked the upside, the length. I thought he played, he plays feisty. He's not physical. He's 170 pounds, but my like for him was where he could go, like what he could become. And again, I don't want to overreact to a photo, on social media, because Lord knows those things, I've seen Patrick Mahomes photos that are kind of the opposite of the Emmanuel Forbes photo. And he's still the greatest quarterback in the world. So we will see, training camp is going to tell us a lot, but I liked Forbes. I liked the way that he played. I thought, the speed, the quickness, those are the things that you loved about his game. And that, coming out of an SEC school, he was able to flip the field. He was able to produce PBUs and turnovers. So I understood the pick, especially at the time. It was like, hey, we need a guy. He's not going to be playing over the line of scrimmage. We need a guy who can kind of play off, use that speed, close on the ball. He fit that really well. This is the shitty thing about drafting, though, is like you draft a guy for your scheme and your team and you're fired. And now he's like, oh, wait, now you're not a scheme fit anymore. And you were a first round pick. So sometimes players just get in bad spots and it's not necessarily their fault. So, Dan Quinn is coming out of a situation in Dallas where he got two dudes who were not first round picks to attack the football, whether it be Bland or Diggs. It felt like that one of them led to NFL in interceptions each of the last 3 years. Exactly. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for Forbes to make plays on the ball, especially with a really, really good defensive line and all the pressure that Dan Quinn generates. So he's got a big opportunity if he can stay on the field.
Obviously, we haven't even gotten to camp yet, Matt, but early here in Washington, they actually had put looks like they put Quan Martin at free safety and Jeremy Chin, which I don't think that's something I don't think gets talked about quite enough, still only 26 years old. It's strong safety. I guess the question is, one, what do you think happened with Chin at the end there in Carolina? Because the first couple of years were really nice. Yeah. And then with Quan Martin, do you think he can get out? Can he get over there and play free safety? He's got the speed, but what do you think about that pairing if that's what it ends up being?
Yeah, I had Quan rated as a free safety if memory serves. I know that we slotted him at free safety a lot. The athleticism is phenomenal. And I think with free safeties, like that's what I would look for in this day and age is that range. Full field range is so important depending on, if you're going split safety or too deep. But I really like him there. I think that's a much more natural position for him than – did he play in the nickel last year mostly? Is that right? Mm-hmm. So I think having him over the top, I would rather have him over the top, certainly, especially when you have Mikey in the nickel. That's his bread and butter. He's going to be your utility knife. So I think Quan over top makes more sense. As for Chin, that's a great question. And I won't, I don't cover the Panthers weekly, but I do remember mid-season looking at the Panthers' upcoming free agents and being like, all your good players are about to be free agents except for Derek Brown, and it was kind of bizarre that they were struggling so badly and they were trading Brian Burns and they hadn't at the time locked up Derek Brown. And it was like, what exactly are they attempting to do here? You're going to lose all these guys. And I had someone who does cover the Panthers hit me and be like, Chin hasn't been good this year. So I don't understand that one either. I love his ability. I mean, I think it's that, the versatility between like a box strong safety, but you're almost kind of a weak side linebacker and you're probably going to play, in the gap a lot on the outside. And you're almost going to be a little bit of a spy against some of these mobile quarterbacks, against RPO type plays. But he, has proven, like you said early in his career, like this dude can lock up tight ends. And I think especially when you're in a division with Philly, like you got to have guys who can tackle at the line of scrimmage. It's like you got to tackle Jalen Hurts. Now you got to tackle Saquon Barkley. And that's where guys like Jeremy Chin are going to be so valuable, is just making tackles at the line of scrimmage is going to be super, super important. So I imagine we'll see him walked up a lot. He's probably going to function like a third linebacker more often than not.
Matt, I don't have your draft board in front of me, but I'm kind of curious of your thoughts on Johnny Newton. I know he kind of fell in the draft. He was supposedly a top 10, top 15 pick. Potentially, we got him at 36. What do you attest to that draft day slide? Was it mostly because of the Liz Frank injury? Was there some concerns that we don't know about from our end of the circle? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was the Liz Frank and just the inability to perform pre-draft. I had moved him down to that exact range. I remember looking at it after the draft of like, who were some of the best values based on my board? And I had a lot of people be like, why wasn't Johnny Newton on your like value list? And I was like, well, I bumped him down, because of the injury, because it just never, you kept waiting for a workout, or like an update, and you never got one. So it was like, okay, this is probably not great news. But I scouted him in person last year against Kansas. And, the Kansas offense last year was dynamic. Devin Neal, their running back, is a stud. At the time, Jason Bean was playing quarterback, not Jalen Daniels, but Jason Bean was a really good college quarterback. They got Dominic Pooney up front on the offensive line. Like, Kansas was a good football team last year, and he was the best player on that field, and it wasn't even close. Like, that dude absolutely dominated that game. Whether he was lining up in a 3-tech, he was playing outside defensive end at times. Kansas, everything is outside the tackle box. So, third, fourth quarter, they started putting him out, in a 5 or 6-tech and trying to stop off counter sweeps. And Kansas won the game, but he was the best player on the field, and it was not even close. And I leaving that game, I was like, this dude will be a top 15 pick. And then, of course, the injury happens and he slides. But, to your point, yeah, top 15 talent. I really do think so. It's just a matter of, getting him over this injury. That pick did surprise me just because of, John Allen and Daron Payne being there. It made me wonder immediately. John Allen had some comments about, I'm not here for another rebuild. My first thought was we might see John Allen get moved on day 3 of the draft. Obviously, it didn't happen. So I think that'll be the interesting thing to watch play out. Fidarian Mathis was the 2nd-round pick as well, right? A couple years ago. So they've got a lot of draft capital on the middle of the defensive line. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah, the problem with Fidarian is he hasn't stayed healthy, and for whatever reason couldn't get his way on the field. The problem with the 2 tackles last year, and we talk about it on this podcast all the time, the 2 of them played 80% of the snaps together. I mean, it was just insane. Yep. How they even stayed healthy, I have no idea. And the fact that they had Mathis and Ridgeway behind them, as much as it makes it feel like they're going to get rid of one of them, I think they really just knew they needed depth in the middle, and they want to get that push up the front.
And the beauty with Johnny is he can play outside, so like if, there might be situations or times where you're going to get those 3 guys on the field together at times, whether that be a 30 front or whatever it might be. So you definitely have built in a lot of versatility, especially with some of those speedy edges, with the Dante Fowler, I loved Dorrance Armstrong coming out of college, as like a developmental type pass rusher. And I really liked KJ Henry, who they got in the 5th round last year. So like there's certainly some guys who have some juice off the edge.
And they've been experimenting with Jamin Davis, kind of like in that Micah Parsons role, if you want to. I don't want to call it Micah Parsons. Don't yell at me.
Yeah, you might as well at this point.
But yeah, that's right.
They have the same agent, they're both fast. I bet David Mulugeta is telling every middle linebacker he has, why don't you try working on pass rush this offseason a little bit? Let's just see what happens.
It makes sense.
I think one of the biggest complaints, at least from the Commanders fan base, about this draft was that they didn't address the tackles. They did address the tackles in the 4th round. I guess that's what I'm getting to. If it's not Brandon Coleman, it's like Cornelius Lucas or the 4th round pick from last year, Braden Daniels, and it doesn't sound like he's anywhere close. What are your thoughts on Coleman? Can he play left tackle? Does he need to keep him the guard?
I thought he was a guard, but every scheme's different. When we rank players, we're ranking 500 players, and it's a generic board. It's not scheme, and so I think that's something that's hard for us at times as analysts you have to go back after the fact to be like, okay, wait, I think for this scheme, like this guy might be okay as a tackle, or that might be okay as a guard. So I'll be curious to see, where Coleman lands once we get through camp. But I thought he was more a guard, but the footwork is there, the quickness is there. He's another guy where, injury has been a little bit of an issue for him. So I think that's a big key. But, to your point about, they didn't draft a tackle. I try to tell people this all the time. You can't create one out of thin air to draft. You can only draft what's there. Mm-hmm. And we saw a run on tackles in the top 50 to where guys are getting overdrafted like crazy. So, could you have drafted a Kingsley Suamatai out of BYU at the, in the second round? Yeah, but that would have been a reach, and you wouldn't have Ben Sinnott, you wouldn't have Mikey Sanders still. So it's like, at some point, you're just trying to build the best team that you can. And it's not like Madden where you can fill every need in one offseason. Sometimes you got to look at your roster and say, all right, can we get by with Cornelius Lucas, knowing we got one of the fastest quarterbacks in the NFL? Can we get by for 1 year like this? And then next year, we'll look at a Kelvin Banks or we'll look at a Will Campbell and we'll try to plug that next year, or a free agent, however it might be. So I think that's like the patience that we have lost as fans, is the understanding of some of these needs got to carry over to the next year, and then you're going to address them that way. Or, like Bears fans, we need a left tackle. We need a left tackle. Braxton Jones is playing like a top 15 left tackle, and you're paying him like $300,000 a year. Just enjoy that while you can. That's sometimes you got to have. It's almost the money ball of the NFL. Sometimes you got to pay one guy rookie day 3 money because he's good enough for that money, and it's an area that you're going to scheme around after that.
Gotcha. One last question for you, if you don't mind. Let's look at the later round draft picks. We had Luke McCaffrey at 100. We had Jordan McGee at 139, and Dominic Hampton, a safety from Washington, at 161. I'm kind of curious, of those three, I think McCaffrey might be the safest bet, but I'm kind of curious, of those three, who do you think would be the most likely to contribute, could start potentially for the team upcoming?
Man, I would say McCaffrey, and I liked him a lot. And some of that was like, oh, okay, there's another McCaffrey brother. But then I watched him at the Super Bowl and was like, oh no, this dude's legit. Like, he is you guys are gonna fall in love with him. He's so tough. And I know it's like there's a little cliche with that, but no, he is incredibly tough, and he does not drop the ball. He has run away from you speed. He's going to be really, really good in the slot. He's going to be that big slot that everybody wants right now. And his route running is really good and only getting better. He's only been playing receiver for 2 years. So the fact that he's a former quarterback, he understands spacing and timing really well. So he's going to be an early impact player. I'm confident in that.
The line is set at 6.5, Matt. Win totals for Commanders this year. Are you taking the over or the under?
Man, I'm going to go over. I think the Giants are going to be awful. So there's 2 wins right there. We'll see. Dallas has the entire team's about to be a free agent. I always worry about things like that a little bit. I think Philly's going to be tough, obviously. But, I would go over, although I've upset some people with my over-under predictions this week. So maybe I'm just trying to get some people who are tweeting me nice things instead of not nice things. So
nice tweets.
We appreciate you on that one. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Matt, we appreciate this, man. I know your time is valuable, and we appreciate you giving it some of it to us.
Yeah, you bet. Good luck this season, guys.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.